I will summarize this to the best of my ability for the next gathering, so people, so what I'm seeing and taking away is consistent with what everybody else is seeing and hopes is being taken away. The next thing in my note is don'ts. I would prefer to focus on a stakeholder ideation session, like making sure I am considering all stakeholders. That's what I would prefer to do. That's what's valuable to me. But I will defer to the crowd that's here as to whether we would like to do that, or do don'ts, or do something else.
Stakeholders.
We good with that? Okay.
You could probably make a list of don'ts that you have heard.
And there are a lot of them. And they're really bad. So this was my, just like I tried to create a draft statement that needed a lot of work, this was my attempt at trying to create a list of stakeholders in the lodge that I need to be hearing from and or taking input from. So I'm gonna put this up, and then I want people to go, Eric, you forgot this, and what about this, and what about this, and you need to talk to this person, etc. That's my goal with this. I should put this. So my stakeholders that I have down are the community and locals. Somehow to me those two things feel different, but maybe they don't to others. The Forest Service, and I would argue the Forest Service is a very significant stakeholder in this. Employees, Montanans, public lands, the environment, Native Americans, animals, trees, the entire Bob Marshall, the valley, and Christian.
And the lake.
Oh, really great. Yeah.
But public lands, they're not it's an entity, but,
Environment.
I mean, you could
Wouldn't
say
necessarily
environmental
be a
groups, like, right? So
Yeah.
you don't have the historical society?
Yep.
Or is that on a different area? Oh, you got it over there, okay.
But I want to add them here. No, let me do this. Another piece of paper.
You got this one here.
Those logs are hard to write on.
No, I'll pay. Culture.
Oh, under culture, there's a group called Alpine Artisans.
Oh, I wrote culture twice. So I wrote on here culture, historical, and Swan Valley Emergency Services, which I think is probably, I don't know if that's the best term for it, but anyway.
What about Swan Valley Connections? Who's the, well, no, Servine isn't the head anymore.
Prisoner recovery office.
Yeah,
Hillary Cooley.
who's head of the?
Chris is the head of the Montana Wildlife Federation,
That's right.
the director of the executive director.
So that'd be Fish and Wildlife Service for the bear recovery.
Is that under Bear Recovery Office?
Well, they also have bull trout responsibilities, Wolverine and
Oh, I
everything.
didn't take away that, that's so
Canada Lynx,
basic.
Fish and Wildlife.
Thank you. What's that?
They're also responsible for ensuring compliance with the Endangered Species Act for Wolverine, Canada lynx, grizzly bears, bull trout, the list goes on.
So I wouldn't consider Lake to be a stakeholder. You want
No,
the
it's
organizations
There
that,
are organizations.
that are involved.
Like the,
Yeah.
Does Holland Lake Lodge have the cabin owners have an association?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so they.
Do they
Yeah,
have-
Because we do it.
Is the cabin people who are under special use permits
Yes,
have a,
an association.
is there a name
It's
for it?
called
Yes, but
the
I don't know what it is.
Homeowners Association.
Yeah, just with homeowners, yeah.
Okay. So the way I am thinking about it is when I put lake, I'm thinking about, what I need to do is try to figure out how to get the experts and people who care about the lake to provide input. So the lake, to me, then there's like.
Those people that you wanna contact.
There's
are
the organizations or
stakeholders.
people underneath that, and it may be organizations, but it also might be,
Like the loom people.
I don't know, so if I pick on you the wrong way, I'm sorry, but like, I believe from what I've heard, he has incredible knowledge about the Forest Service and Forest Service process. He's not the Forest Service. I want him and his input involved
Yeah.
in the Forest Service, even though he's not the Forest Service, if that makes sense. Yeah, I'm talking about you.
Should FWP be on there?
Pretty
Yeah.
much every government agency should be on there, so
Government,
US
it's
Fish and
like
Wildlife
government
Service,
agencies, yeah.
Mountain Fish,
There's
Wildlife
a
and
lot
Parks,
of
US
Department of
Forest
Environmental
Service,
Quality.
DEQ, if you're talking about the lake, because they would all be involved.
Here,
County
Forest
Commission.
Service is kind of will keep.
I have HMA, US Fish and Wildlife Parks.
So, this is US, the state is Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks. So this is the federal Montana FWP. Yeah, usually government.
I would say government agencies, I mean.
Well, who are the specific people who know about the lake quality? People in the Forest Service,
DEQ.
DEQ.
A critical state agency is the Montana State Historic Preservation Office. It's called SHPO, S-H-P-O, State Historic Preservation Office.
State Historical.
But your local group is very knowledgeable about the lodge.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the US Upper Swan Valley Historical Society, yes.
Agents, yeah.
As long as we've gone from state down to local, we have a community council and we have county commissioners. So dealing with, even though it's a federal piece of property, it exists within a county and within a community. And I do think the community council is a stakeholder, as I do think the county commissioners will represent the county as
And
stakeholders.
my understanding is there's more than one community council.
No, there is a community council for the Condon area, which goes from the summit.
Sealy Lake has a.
So you're not talking about the Sea League Community Council?
No, I'm talking about
Well,
the.
that's
We also
Condon.
have a community foundation.
I was trying to wait till we got done with the state stuff to sort of focus in on
Community
local.
Council, Condon, Sealy, and then there's like Missoula, maybe it's not a community council, but it's Missoula Commissioners.
commissioners, county commissioners.
County has some jurisdiction on shoreline development.
And it's the county health department who really is a stakeholder because they are overseeing that whole septic issue.
Oh, the county is not the Forest Service?
DEQ.
County and DEQ.
What's the,
They what?
Forest
Well, what's
Service
the
Defense.
county have to do with it? They have to approve it?
Aren't they responsible for that septic?
Yep.
It's the DEQ.
Yes, it goes.
They should.
Okay.
So all the community foundations, the ones that.
Are the outfitters a stakeholder? I know that the outfit Panther Camp is, I don't know if those people are some kind of stakeholder.
I wrote it down. What he do? Happy to talk to him when we get into it.
So,
They can't, whoever runs the special use permit, I don't know, the special use permit.
Concessionaire.
Yeah.
So Eric, I'm not sure that this is something that would be of interest to you, but, 2 years ago, there were over 6,500 comments on Powder's proposal. And they're all on a database that you can access online. Most of those were 1 or 2 paragraphs. Probably, maybe 20% of them were several pages, and probably 5 or 10% of them were more than 5 or 10 pages. And most of them were from individuals from all over the country, mostly Western Montana, but from all over the country. But there were a lot of interest groups that submitted comments as interest groups. So if you really want to, get a thorough estimate of stakeholders, you might want to start by looking at that database and all those comments, and give you a sense not only of the types of people, organizations, where they came from, but also if it's kind of a tedious thing to kind of start reading through those things. We read through all of them, as
Sure.
I say, Paul. You can get a pretty good sense of what people's feelings are about, certainly about what Powder proposed. But in that, you can sort of separate out probably more generic attitudes and values
Yeah.
beyond just their reaction to Powder.
I want to be sure exactly how to phrase this. I have not read all 6,500. I have attempted to get a good sense.
But you scanned through some.
I have attempted to get a good sense of the sort of general sentiments and created sort of, in my style, sort of the key
Okay.
things that I
That's
took
great.
from a lot of those. And then there are some that various stakeholders have plucked out what they think were the most relevant and have handed to me, and I've tried to read those. So I've attempted to get a pretty good feel.
That's great.
And A, and B, I suspect that at some point in this process, when I submit
You're gonna hear from them
an
again.
MDP, I'm hoping there aren't 6,500 and they aren't as angry, but I am sure there will be a lot of comments and there will be some anger. And I'm ready for it, and I think that's really important. I think that's what everyone says. Others?
You wrote the Bob, but I think there's a lot of wilderness advocates and especially concerned with the recommended wilderness on Swan Front that are interested in the outcome of the lodge and if it increases recreation.
And what does I'm not sure I understood.
Yeah, like capturing wilderness advocates as a stakeholder. Montana Wild is an organization that specifically advocates for wilderness.
Wilderness Watch.
If you come out with a bogus MDP like Powder did, you will find out who all these people are.
Really fast. Maybe I should throw that out
Yeah,
there.
just-
Since everybody's input,
just
just
put out
can you,
BS.
and then pull it back.
Yeah,
Do it again.
and see who responds.
That would go well. Other? Super helpful. If anybody would like to take a picture of this and send me any contacts, that information that you have, that would be enormously helpful to me. Okay. What I would like to do is go home and see my wife. But I am 100% willing to stay until 9 as promised and continue the journey. I have don'ts on the list, which I'm glad to do. As I said, I don't know that that's terribly helpful for me, but I think it's really important that everybody feels heard and that I have heard the fears and concerns. So that's one thing we could do. And the other is to begin a discussion about the pros and cons and trade-offs. When I say double revenue, what are the pros and cons and trade-offs of what that means in different potential scenarios? That will be spicier. I would prefer to go home and see my wife and continue. I will say one other thing. I think this process, I came into the first meeting on whatever date it was, September 3rd, whatever the date was, thinking that time was my enemy, that there was a lot of time pressure. And so that's why I did the meeting sort of really quickly and whatever. I just thought there was a lot of time pressure. Not anything that happened in that meeting, but I now believe that this is going to take a while. This process is going to take a while.
It needs to take a while.
And it needs to take a while. So that's a revelation for me. So I had scheduled meetings every week. I'm not sure we all need to do meetings every week. I want to do enough meetings that everybody, again, I'm happy to do them every week. But I think this is going to be a longer process than I thought.
And what's on the agenda for next week's meeting?
I don't know, I had a rough concept.
Do's and don'ts was on your original.
Don't do,
Yeah.
can't do, was what it said on the flip chart.
What's that, do's and don'ts?
Don't do, can't do.
Yeah, don't do, can't do. I think that's really important to do. I'm happy to do it tonight. I think that's important. I think that a discussion about the pros and cons of like, I don't know, I'll just pick one that's up there, right? Staying open longer. There are pros and cons to the environment to staying open longer. There are pros and cons to the community of staying open longer. There are pros and cons to, what's that?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Emergency people.
Yeah, emergency people, like, right, there are pros and cons to that as a potential solution. So I wanna talk through that, like try to really think through the pros and cons of that. There are pros and cons to saving the gift shop. I wanna talk through the pros and cons of saving the gift shop. There are,
Why don't you just do it?
right now,
Why don't you just do it? Just say, I'm gonna save the gift shop.
well, because I think there are pros and cons to that.
This is where I said earlier, I think you're making it overly complicated.
Yeah, maybe.
Just do it. It's the oldest building. People want it.
Because I you know, get myself in trouble here. I don't know what it's gonna cost to save that building. I only know what a lot of people have said. But whatever it is a number. And that number then needs to be factored into the doubling revenue or not. Like if you don't save the gift shop, you don't need to double revenue, just oversimplify. I think we need to save the gift shop. I think we should.
Talking about saving the structure, not the gift.
Yeah, the structure, the building in this circumstance, in this example. I think I think the permit holder should invest in saving the gift shop. But that means there's more cost, that means you have to maybe charge more somewhere along the way, or you have to,
Does the gift shop pay for itself? Selling all the swag?
I don't know that I've looked at it that way. I don't know that you need the gift shop to sell the swag.
Eric, I know that your intention is not to talk about the gift shop actually right now, but
Yes.
I'm,
You're right.
I am curious, and I think I know the answer to this too. Has the Forest Service talked to you about, as the permit holder, you do have access to federal grants for restoration and upkeeping the infrastructure?
The Forest Service has not talked to me about that. I've heard that, and I think that's,
Or you might have building partners with the Historical Society.
And,
should be great.
and the state historical society.
that's
has
awesome.
grant funds for
That's awesome.
restoration. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you could also, for both the gift shop and the old lodge building itself, you can apply for the listing of those buildings on the National Registry of Historic Places, which expands the potential grant opportunities for helping with the restoration and maintenance of those buildings.
All this down. Yes. This
Well,
is exactly the kind of thing I want to go through.
Then there's restoration experts, architects in this, state that do that kind of work.
Yeah. That's what I wanted. That's a conversation that I think is super valuable, because I can go in my little model and say, well, I think it's gonna cost X, and I can model out what that means, but these are all wonderful ideas to try to reduce that cost, which reduces the pressure on, quote, doubling revenue. Which, by the way, is just an arbitrary number. I wanted to put a number out there to try to frame it when people were asking, are you powder, and are you gonna develop it to limitless potential, which I think are really valid concerns and fears, and or have some stake in the ground to folks who say it should just go back into the ground and let's turn it into a campground, which are viable strategies, not what I'm here for. So I was trying to, and I was also trying to say, I don't think doing nothing is the answer. So anyway, that was my attempt. That's what that was trying to capture. It might be 50% more revenue. Depends how, as we go through this.
If I remember correctly, the next meeting was to be 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
And I think you'll have problems with continuity, because that's a particularly difficult time for a number of people in this room to join into a community meeting. So I'm gonna encourage we take a half hour and get the central things you need to go back to your tent and do some hard thinking and go through everything you've heard tonight, and suggest that maybe next week's meeting, because of the timing issue, among other issues, may not be as productive as you had hoped when you felt under time pressure.
Yeah, that's fair. You think I can, I sort of know the answer to that question, but can I or should I cancel that meeting?
Well, I would put it open to the group, who can actually come next Thursday at 10 o'clock in the.
The question is, can someone else that's not here today come? But then we'll be more of your
Then
sharing.
we'll be starting over.
I think I'm gonna have to do that a few hundred more times in this
Right,
process.
right.
Just say it's been rescheduled, not canceled. You're going to reschedule that meeting.
Well, just by show of hands in this room, who's got on their calendar is able to do it next week?
I cannot do it.
I cannot.
It's on Wednesday at 10 a.m.
Yeah,
right?
10 to 12.
There's
I
a
just worry about that, Eric.
There's a-
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Yeah.
Go with the sense of the group, but.
People working for a living that aren't retired.
Yeah.
I think that, I think, John, that it's important for me to have it, and if it's a lot of repeat for me and or the few people who come, I think I would apologize, but I think it's really important to,
Stay the course on
well,
it.
I think it's important to stay the course, but I also think that there might be people who 10 o'clock on a Wednesday is better as opposed to 6 o'clock at night. I don't know, maybe they have little kids or something, and they sort of park and shoot up or something.
You'll find out.
We might get a different slice. So I think I'm gonna.
Just wanted to raise it,
Yeah, I
because
think that's really.
it changes the dynamic of who's able to be here this time of day.
So
coffee cake would be.
Wednesday,
Second,
Next Wednesday.
next Wednesday, what's the date?
second,
Is it
October 2nd.
second?
Oh, October 2nd, of course. 10 o'clock.
I will also throw out, so I'm not perceived as hiding, I am hoping to have a series of meetings with various stakeholders that are not public. Not because I don't want them public, but because I think it's important to have certain meetings with certain stakeholders, not in the chat room. So for whatever that's worth, we throw that out there
It's perfectly legitimate.
for some people.
Less people involved, the easier it is to get something done.
Yeah.
I've just got a question, Eric. I know it seems like you're stepping into this whole process. I know there's a lot to it, a lot of ins and outs, different stakeholders, different government entities and such. I know you can't answer it, but I mean, are you in it for the long haul?
Yeah,
Is there like?
I've tried to answer that question. We're doing this more as my family.
Mhm.
It's primarily me, more as my family, and there might be some close non-family members, but it's really me.
Mhm.
Like, for right or for wrong, if this happens and I become a permit holder of this community, it's me. And my intention is not, I do not think this is something that is invest in it, put some money in it, fix it, and then go on my merry way. I think this is something that this community will be stuck with me for a long time.
And like I said, I know it's a loaded question. You know, there's a lot to it. Talking to different government entities, stakeholders, local people, and trying to get the plan together. You know, if you're like, if I'm out a year on this and I haven't gotten everything nailed down, you know, is it worth my time and effort to?
Yeah, I do not think, I think the odds that I am the permit holder and operating the lodge for next season are almost zero. I would be floored if that were the outcome. I'm prepared for it, but I just don't think that's gonna
So
be.
you're, I mean, kind of, you know, realistic on, you know, as you're stepping into this whole process and seeing what's
Yeah, I don't know if I'm realistic. I think that I am prepared that it's.
That it's not gonna be next year.
That's right.
but- Okay.
I think that's right.
I don't think
I'm
the
glad
sewage
they
treatment
wanted to take
facility is
the
not
time
gonna be,
To learn everything I can
ready
from all the
next year.
stakeholders.
I'm just gonna say something that's really kind of silly, but, I've had it on my mind, so the don'ts. So I've heard this MDP, and that's, right, so the D. That's a don't for me, development. That's a kind of a word that doesn't really resonate with me, and I think you've said it in your thing, sustain, maintain. It's different than development, in a way, in an emotional way.
I actually 100% agree with that.
So maybe, tweak it a little bit. Don't throw this MDP out. Can you create, is that like a silly, this is a silly thing I said that.
No,
Can you re-envision master development plan and turn it into something that, feels better?
Yeah.
Right? And incorporates the idea of
So you-
sustaining and.
Jim, you have a thought on that?
Well, you can do whatever you want to communicate with the public and whatever, there's probably much better ways to communicate than in the format of an NDP, about what your intentions and plans actually are. But ultimately, you have to, as a component of the permit, or requirement of the permit, you have to submit a master development plan to the Forest Service, which outlines the permit holder's plans and intentions for further development of the permit site consistent with the uses. So it's like, the best way to explain it is like a ski area. They have a special use permit that's very similar to the one for Holland Lodge. Ski areas have to develop a master development plan. And that's what they say, well, we're gonna build these new rooms over here, we're gonna put a restaurant over here, we're gonna build this base area of parking areas on federal land here. They even, they talk about what's gonna go on private land as well, but they have to give the future intentions of what they're gonna do on this permit area.
Or not do.
Or not to. So some master development plans for resorts, for example, we don't propose to do anything other than maintain the current facilities and uses that exist within this permit. And that's the whole nature of their NDP. So it can, but they do have to produce.
So it's
the master development.
a requirement of the Forest
Yeah,
Service
sure.
process to get the permit, so that's why I use it. I agree that it is unfortunate.
But you can revision it, you
That
can
just-
reimagine it.
Well, I can in these conversations. But then I'll just sort of, from my perspective, I said, I also have stakeholders who think I am being deceitful. And so if I don't acknowledge that an MDP exists, am I trying to hide something? So I'm just trying to navigate the best.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't
best journey.
do it or don't, honor it, but
I
it's
also.
the idea of that development.
I agree with Tim, I tried to say this in one of the meetings, I think that, in my very briefly reviewing what an MDP is, I think it only captures a part. I think whatever's in the MDP, there's a lot more that the community should want to hear and know from me besides what's contained in that document, in my opinion. There's a lot, and we've been talking about it. So the MDP for me is like a really important kind of subset of all this. And it's what the Forest Service needs, and I'm gonna honor that, I have to honor that. But I think that there's a lot more than what is contained in that document that's important to the lodge and sustaining it and the environment than what is in the Forest Service requirement. It's just my opinion.
there could be a master development plan that's never implemented. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but there was a master development plan by Christian's father, I think it was, that was planned to have more cabins, and the cabins were never built.
And on the other side, Christian got a new permit in 2017. He's never produced a master development plan.
Yeah.
I get in trouble whenever I do
I
this.
never knew it was directly associated with the Forest Service, I just thought it was a business term.
Yeah, no, it's a Forest Service thing. It's a Forest Service
So,
thing.
yeah, I didn't.
I get in trouble when I say what I'm about to say, and I'm gonna say it again, because I'll probably say it 10 more times, I'll probably get in trouble every single time. My sort of general understanding is that the MTP sort of sets the bar of what the permit holder can do. Like, you don't have to do all that, but it is the limit of what the Forest Service will allow you to do. And you have to do all the work, the EIN, what's it called? EIS. You have to do EIS whatever this potential that you're gonna do is. And then there's an operating plan, which also is submitted. And the MTP is sort of like anything you might do in the next 10 years. And I don't know this specifically 10 years. Jim can correct me on this, he's way smarter about all this than me. But that's sort of like getting permission for everything you're doing in the next 10 years, but you don't have to do it. And then there's an operating plan that one submits and gets approval on, and that is what you must do to maintain the permit. So that's sort of the shorter term. So there's these two, like, trying to capture what you must do in the short term, and most of what you're preventing you or stopping you from doing anything beyond. Is that fair?
No, but we don't wanna know.
I told you I get in trouble every time I say this.
Well said.
Great answer, Jim.
Hey Eric, you've been pretty clear, I think, on you can't just keep the lodge the same and
That's
operate
what I
the
do.
same revenue source. You need
That's what I
to increase your revenue, and you could do that various ways, whether that's extending the season, building more buildings, increasing capacity, number of visitors. You could increase the price. There's other ways also. I think a good exercise for this group in a future meeting would to get a feel, and I don't know if you have an answer on it, if you can just do one of those things, or if it has to be a combination of those things.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a good exercise.
That I came prepared for that.
Okay.
To try to have that discussion and to talk about the pros and cons of each. And then to do a little sticky note thing, sort of really similar.
Yeah, I think we could get a feel for what folks would be willing of those things.
Yep.
And not.
I think that would be a good thing to do at the next evening meeting, so,
I-
and knowing that
That's
that's
right, to your
gonna
point, John, I
happen.
think that we should do that at the next evening meeting.
Yeah.
Just to tag on to Luke's, something I've been curious about is, and again, I don't want to ask a question that leads you into the NDA, but just generally speaking, does anybody have any concept of what percentage of the revenue from the lodge is generated from the gift shop? Is it?
It's actually,
Is
from my opinion,
Is it minor? Is it fairly big? Is
I
it-
think
is
I
it-
can
is
share
it a
this.
critical feature for you?
I think I can share this without getting in trouble. I was surprised at how much food and beverage revenue was in the financials and how little lodge revenue was in the financials. That was my first surprise.
Well, there's really, is there only 8 rooms in that lodge?
There's 9 rooms in the lodge and they share 2 bathrooms.
Yeah, who wants to stay there?
And,
Well, I do.
Well, I mean, I would like your cabins better.
and then there are 6 cabins.
So if they're not available.
And at one point, I don't know how long ago, there were rooms in what is now called the gift shop.
That used to be
There were rooms in
in
what is
the
now
gift
called
shop?
the gift shop. There used to be.
Historically, it's been the residence of the owners.
Oh, and then there's the
Of
residence,
SUP.
and then there's the
It's been
GM's
a
cabin.
residence,
Yeah, then there's the GM's
for
cabin.
years and years. But when
Right.
Christian would have a wedding, he rented out the whole place. I mean, the people at the wedding had to rent all the cabins, and had to rent all the rooms, so.
So I was surprised at how much revenue the gift shop generated.
Well,
It's not on the order of food and beverage by any stretch of the imagination, but it was more than an insignificant number.
well, the gift shop also rented out the paddleboards and the kayak,
Yeah, that he reports separately.
oh really, it wasn't, cause that's what we paid for, was the gift shop.
He reports that separately. There was not a lot of that.
Do you know how much you make under here?
I can see, no, is the answer. I can see what his margins are on food and beverage. but I
But I
can't.
mean, you charge $5 for a beer, does a beer cost you $1, if that? 50 cents?
Yeah, I don't know.
We sold 6 packs
Depends
for
on what kind
$30.
Whoa,
And charged for each beer.
And people bought them.
wow.
Oh, yeah.
I've been pretty thirsty sometimes.
What about,
Bikers.
Wow. Oh, no, you know, it's remote.
It's a long day to mix in with
You know, that gift
Yeah,
shop.
there's the Hungry
could be
Bear
used
and,
For any
Liquid
purpose.
Louis.
I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Right. That's all, I think, in possibilities, right? Should the gift shop be there, or should the gift shop be, I don't throw out ideas if you're gonna skewer before, but I don't know. Should it be in a trailer like at a NASCAR race, right, where you go and buy these things that you gift shop? I don't know, it's all possibilities.
Does anybody know how much the people from the campground utilize the gift shop? Do they use it or not?
Do they what?
Do they buy
I
stuff
don't,
from the
I
gift shop
don't
or not?
know.
I doubt it.
When I worked there, people came to the bar. There wasn't, I mean, I worked in the evenings, there wasn't a lot of gift shop action, but they might have come during the day when I was there.
The reason my question is, I'm just curious, as Eric posed or framed the choices he's confronting, and Luke summarized it there, where does the potential for gift shop revenue growth fit into this equation?
Well, I think it 100%
And
fits.
how significant is that potential?
I tried to throw that out in the last meeting, I'm not sure anybody heard me sort of ideating about that, but, I think if one could figure out how to crank volume, quote, through the gift shop, you don't have any humans, like, humans aren't necessarily here.
So that gift shop supported a lot, some local
Yeah.
artists, some local jewelers,
Yeah.
authors.
Yep.
And I have my
I
books
think
there.
all of that, we tried to talk about that in the last meeting, I agree with that very much, right? Is there
That's a nice touch.
is there a farmer's, could we do a, forget the gift shop, could you do a farmer's market where local gifts, could you do a craft fair?
People
for
like-
like-
From out of the area, like buying things that are made locally.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially if you come year after year to the launch.
And there's
Love having
And there's
that.
a pretty good database, though I've never seen it, I've been told, of, folks who have stayed at the lodge that you could market, maybe in Montana or whatever, to, or somebody could make a,
Californians would eat it up.
they would eat it up.
Do they still?
I have no problem taking money from them.
Do they still have like a?
At a very high
signed
margin.
Guest book, you can look at all the old guest books.
They- I
so that
think that-
people have written their
I'm told it's
addresses
pretty
and
good.
their names and
Yeah, totally agree with this.
whatever you do.
But yes, I don't think doubling the gift shop revenue solves the problem, but I do think that there's a lot of potential to relieve the burden by really focusing on the gift shop. I think he does a really good business there. I'm surprised. Awesome, thank you everyone. I appreciate your patience, I appreciate your input.